A company you've probably never heard of just hit an $11 billion valuation, putting it above companies like Stripe, Discord, and Canva. But here's the wild part. SambaNova isn't a consumer app. It's an AI chip startup, and it just raised massive funding specifically to challenge Nvidia's stranglehold on artificial intelligence infrastructure. Think of Nvidia like the Intel of the AI boom. They've dominated processor chips for machine learning so completely that they control over 90% of the market. But that dominance is expensive. A single Nvidia H100 chip costs nearly $20,000. That's a whole car. SambaNova's pitch is simple. We can build better chips, faster and cheaper. And investors, including massive venture capital funds, are betting billions that the king of AI chips is finally going to face real competition. This funding round didn't just happen in a vacuum. It signals something seismic about how the world builds AI infrastructure. If SambaNova pulls this off, it could reshape everything from data centers to the actual cost of training the next generation of AI models. And here's where it gets interesting. SambaNova was founded back in 2017 by chip engineers and Stanford researchers who were genuinely tired of watching one company own the entire AI infrastructure game. Their CEO, Rodrigo Liang, spent years at Cerebras Systems, another chip startup trying to break into this space, so he knows exactly how brutally hard it is to unseat Nvidia. The company spent years in stealth mode, quietly designing their flagship chip architecture without the tech press noticing. Then they emerged with a philosophy that's completely different from how Nvidia builds chips. Rather than designing a chip first and then forcing software to fit through it, SambaNova did the opposite. They designed the hardware and the software stacked together from the ground up as one integrated system. It's like the difference between building a highway and hoping traffic adapts versus designing the highway and traffic patterns as one synchronized thing. That co-design philosophy, chip and software locked together, is their bet for actually competing against Nvidia's dominance. The broader context here is crucial. The AI boom has made compute infrastructure absurdly expensive. Training a state-of-the-art language model now costs millions or tens of millions of dollars. Most of that money goes straight to Nvidia. Companies, cloud providers, and governments are all desperately hunting for alternatives because Nvidia's pricing power is becoming a genuine constraint on AI progress itself. So what makes SambaNova fundamentally different at the silicon level? The answer is reconfigurability. Nvidia's architecture is optimized for one specific pattern of computation, the matrix multiplications that power modern neural networks. It's brilliant engineering, but it's rigid. If your workload doesn't fit that pattern perfectly, compute cycles get wasted. SambaNova's chip, called Karya, uses a dataflow-optimized architecture instead. Imagine Nvidia as a massive highway with fixed lanes. Traffic flows in a predetermined pattern, period. Karya is more like a river that reshapes itself for whatever flows through it. The chip reconfigures on the fly to match the exact computational pattern you need. That means less wasted energy, less data bouncing around in memory, and faster throughput for workloads outside traditional deep learning. The real secret sauce is the software. SambaNova built their own compiler, an incredibly smart translator that takes AI models and figures out exactly how to map them onto the reconfigurable hardware for maximum efficiency. Nvidia H100 might be faster in raw speed metrics, but if Karya can do the same job with half the power consumption and half the latency, that's an entirely different value proposition. Power matters enormously because data centers are energy constrained. Electricity bills add up fast when you're training massive models around the clock. So who's actually interested in buying these chips? Here's where the story gets concrete. SambaNova has already announced partnerships with major cloud providers and enterprise customers. They're not just theoretical, they've already got test deployments running in real environments. The kinds of workloads that benefit most from Karya are fascinating. Generative AI inference, the part where you run a trained model to generate output, often doesn't fit Nvidia's architecture perfectly. You might be running smaller models, doing batch processing with unusual patterns, or handling recommendation systems that don't need raw speed as much as they need efficiency. Financial services firms are extremely interested because they run inference workloads at massive scale. A bank running millions of fraud detection queries per day doesn't need the absolute fastest chip. They need the most efficient chip. Same story with recommendation engines at retail and social media companies. Google, Meta, Microsoft, they all run custom silicon internally, and they're all looking at SambaNova seriously. The other huge category is specialized AI applications. Robots, autonomous systems, scientific computing. These use cases actually play to Karya's strengths in handling unusual computational patterns. That's where SambaNova gains real traction beyond the Nvidia comparison. Let's talk head-to-head. Nvidia wins on raw training speed for conventional deep learning. If you're building the next GPT, H100 is still fastest. That's why Nvidia dominates cutting-edge research and stays the go-to for companies pushing the boundaries of model size and capability. But SambaNova wins where companies actually make money, inference and specialized workloads, for running trained models at scale. Karya can match or exceed Nvidia's performance while using 30 to 50% less power. Multiply that across a data center, and you're talking hundreds of millions in electricity savings annually. The ecosystem difference is genuinely massive, though. Nvidia built CUDA, a software ecosystem so powerful that entire industries are built around it. SambaNova's stack is newer, less mature. That's a real disadvantage, though it's improving rapidly. Then there's pricing. H100 costs around $20,000. Karya could undercut that by 50 to 60%, making it genuinely attractive for cost-conscious enterprises managing compute budgets. Think about Amazon or Google running trillions of inference queries monthly. A cheaper chip at scale changes everything about their economics. But here's the twist. Nvidia isn't sleeping. They're releasing new chips constantly. This is where the real story starts. What does this mean for the future of AI infrastructure? The implications are absolutely massive. If SambaNova actually captures even 20% of the inference market, that's billions in revenue. And crucially, it breaks Nvidia's decades-long stranglehold on where enterprises spend money. Nvidia doesn't just sell chips. They sell an entire ecosystem and mindshare advantage compounded over 2 decades. A viable competitor means customers have actual options. Options mean better pricing, better service, and faster innovation across the board. Right now, if you want to train a large model or run inference at scale, you're locked into Nvidia in practice. That lock-in has let them charge premium pricing with minimal competition. A credible alternative changes the power dynamic completely. The cost of AI infrastructure has been a genuine bottleneck on progress. Research labs, startups, governments, everyone's been waiting desperately for chip costs to come down so they can build their own models rather than renting from OpenAI, Google, or Anthropic. Cheaper inference could democratize AI deployment massively. Smaller companies could run their own AI systems instead of paying cloud giants for API access. That's a structural change in how AI gets built and deployed worldwide. But this is where the story gets far more complicated than just chip performance. Here's why investors see SambaNova as a winning bet despite Nvidia's massive head start. First, the market is genuinely huge and growing explosively. Nvidia's data center revenue crossed $50 billion annually, and that's expected to accelerate. A market that massive can absolutely support multiple winners. Second, Nvidia's dominance actually creates vulnerability. When one company controls over 90% of a critical market, regulation starts happening, antitrust scrutiny increases. Customers get nervous about strategic dependency. SambaNova benefits directly from all that pressure. Third, there's a land and expand strategy at play. You don't dethrone Nvidia in training overnight. That's potentially a decade-long play, but you can dominate inference faster, and it's a faster-growing segment. Once enterprises build inference systems on Karya, they're more likely to try training workloads too. Momentum builds. Fourth, the engineering talent is world-class. These aren't random chip engineers, Stanford researchers, Cerebra's veterans, people who've been thinking about AI hardware architecture for years. Execution risk is lower than typical startups. Finally, the economic math works out. If you deliver 2 to 3 times better efficiency per dollar, even if Nvidia cuts prices in half, you're still winning. Investors aren't betting SambaNova will beat Nvidia in a head-to-head. So here's what the SambaNova funding round actually means for you and the broader AI world. It signals that Nvidia's reign as the sole superpower in AI chips is ending. Not immediately, Nvidia will stay dominant for years. But the trajectory is now clear. Competition is becoming real. By 2027 or 2028, enterprises will have genuine choices about which chips to run their AI on. Models will run on different architectures. Workloads will get optimized for different hardware approaches. That diversity is genuinely healthy for the entire AI ecosystem and innovation speed. Watch for 3 specific things over the next 18 months. First, real customer deployments. How many enterprises actually put Karya into production versus just testing? Second, software maturity. Does the compiler get faster and easier? Do developers actually want to build on the stack? Third, pricing moves by Nvidia. Will they cut prices to defend market share against this threat? If they do, everyone benefits from cheaper compute. The real story here isn't just about one startup disrupting one company. It's about whether the infrastructure cost of AI comes down enough to let more people, more researchers, and more startups build and experiment with their own models. That democratization is what makes this funding round genuinely historic. Follow for daily AI news, and we'll track how this story unfolds.